fog on Route 17 inch. It happened in November 2009. On a lonely highway known as Route 17, the road passed through a dense forest, a place where drivers often complained about strange fog that appeared suddenly, even on clear nights. Most people thought it was just weather, until Daniel Carter experienced something he could never explain. Daniel was 27 years old, a delivery driver who often worked late nights. One night, around 1:40 a.m., he was driving his van back home after finishing his last delivery. The highway was empty. No cars, no lights, just darkness and the sound of his engine. Then, something strange happened. Up ahead, the road slowly disappeared into a thick white fog. Daniel frowned. It hadn't been foggy all night, but now the entire road looked like it was being swallowed by a moving cloud. He slowed the van down. "Strange," he whispered. The fog was so dense, he could barely see 10 meters ahead. Still, he kept driving. The forest on both sides looked darker than usual, almost like the trees were watching him. After about 2 minutes inside the fog, Daniel noticed something disturbing. His GPS stopped working. The screen froze. Then it suddenly went black. His radio also started crackling with static. "Great," Daniel muttered. He reached to change the station, but the radio only produced a strange, distorted sound, almost like someone whispering through the static. He turned it off. The fog kept getting thicker. Then suddenly, he saw something on the road ahead. A person, standing in the middle of the highway. Daniel slammed the brakes. The van screeched loudly. The figure stood completely still, surrounded by fog. It looked like a woman wearing an old white dress. Her hair was long, covering most of her face. Daniel rolled down the window slightly. "Hey, are you okay?" he shouted. The woman didn't move, didn't respond. She just stood there. Daniel felt a strange chill run down his spine. Something about the way she stood felt wrong, almost unnatural. Then slowly, the woman began to walk toward the van. But her movements were strange, not normal walking, more like she was gliding through the fog. Daniel's heart started pounding. He turned the engine on again, ready to drive away if needed. The woman came closer and closer until she was only a few meters away. That's when Daniel noticed something terrifying. Her feet weren't touching the ground. Daniel's blood ran cold. Without thinking, he slammed the accelerator. The van shot forward, passing through the fog. But in the side mirror, he saw something that made his stomach drop. The woman was no longer on the road. She was now standing behind the van. Even though he had just driven past her, Daniel gripped the steering wheel tighter. "That's impossible," he whispered. The fog around him suddenly grew even thicker. Then, his headlights flickered. Once, twice, and then, they went out completely. Now he was driving through total darkness. Only the faint glow of the dashboard remained. Daniel slowed down, trying not to panic. Then suddenly, he heard something. A knock. From the back of the van. Daniel froze. Another knock came. Louder this time. Knock. Knock. Something was inside the cargo area. But Daniel knew that was impossible. He had delivered everything hours ago. The van was empty. Then he heard it again. But this time, it wasn't knocking. It was scratching, like something with long nails dragging across metal. Daniel's breathing became heavy. He grabbed his phone to call someone, but there was no signal. None. Then, the scratching stopped. For a moment, everything went silent. Then slowly, a voice came from the back of the van. A quiet whisper, right behind him. "Why did you leave me?" Daniel felt his entire body go numb. The voice sounded like a woman, cold, broken, and angry. Then the whisper came again, but this time closer, almost right beside his ear. "Turn around." Daniel didn't move. Every instinct in his body told him not to look, but curiosity and fear slowly took over. He turned his head slightly and saw something in the reflection of the rear mirror. Someone was sitting in the back seat, the same woman from the road. Her face was now visible, pale, rotting, and her eyes were completely black. She was smiling. Daniel screamed and slammed the brakes. The van skidded across the road and finally stopped. When Daniel looked again, the back seat was empty. The fog outside slowly began to fade. Within seconds, the road became clear again. The forest looked normal. His headlights turned back on. His GPS restarted. Everything was normal again. Daniel sat there shaking, trying to understand what just happened. Then he noticed something that made his heart stop. On the inside of the rear window, there were handprints. Small, pale, and wet, like someone had pressed their hands against the glass. From inside the van, Daniel never drove on Route 17 again. Months later, he discovered something disturbing. In 1986, a woman had died on that exact highway during a foggy night. She had been hit by a vehicle, and the driver never stopped. People say that on certain nights, when the fog rolls in, drivers on Route 17 sometimes see a woman standing on the road, waiting for someone to finally take her home. But those who stop often say the same thing later. They didn't drive her anywhere. She followed them. This story was shared by a group of college students who went on a road trip in 2016. For friends, Hassan, Bilal, Omar, and Saad, they had planned a weekend trip to a remote hill area far from the city. A place famous for its beautiful forests, old roads, and mysterious fog that appeared late at night. At least, that's what the locals said. But none of them believed in ghost stories. They left the city around 9 p.m., laughing, playing music, enjoying the empty highway. The drive was peaceful for the first 2 hours, until they entered the mountain road. That's when something strange happened. The temperature suddenly dropped, and a thick fog began covering the road. Bilal slowed the car down. "Bro, I can barely see anything," he said. The fog was so dense, the headlights only illuminated a small white wall in front of them. The forest around them looked darker than usual, almost like the trees were closing in on the road. After about 15 minutes of slow driving, they noticed something strange. The road looked familiar, too familiar. Omar frowned. "Didn't we pass this broken sign earlier?" he asked. Saad looked outside. On the side of the road was an old metal sign, bent and rusted. It read, "Black Hollow Forest Road." Hassan laughed nervously. Maybe there are 2 signs like that. But deep down, they all felt something wasn't right. They kept driving. Another 10 minutes passed, and then suddenly, they saw the same sign again. The exact same one. Same rust. Same broken corner. Same words. Bilal stopped the car. "That's impossible," he said quietly. "We just passed this." The fog around them seemed to grow thicker, almost like it was surrounding the car. Saad tried checking his phone GPS, but the map wouldn't load. No signal. Omar tried his phone too. Nothing. Then suddenly, the car radio turned on by itself. A loud burst of static filled the car. Everyone jumped. Bilal quickly turned the radio off. But a few seconds later, it turned back on again. This time, the static slowly changed into something else. A voice. Soft. Distorted. Barely understandable. "Don't leave." The 4 friends looked at each other. "Did you hear that?" Hassan whispered. No one answered, because they had all heard it. Bilal immediately started the car again. "We're leaving this place." He pressed the accelerator and drove faster. But the fog refused to clear. The road stretched endlessly in front of them, white, silent, and empty. Then suddenly, Hassan pointed ahead. "Stop the car." Bilal slammed the brakes. Standing in the middle of the road was a little boy. He looked around 8 or 9 years old, wearing old clothes, and standing completely still in the fog. Saad rolled down the window slightly. "Hey kid, what are you doing out here?" he called. The boy didn't respond. He just stood there, staring at the car. Then slowly, he began walking toward them. But something about his movement felt strange. His steps were slow, unnatural, almost like he was being pulled forward. The boy finally reached the front of the car. His face was still hidden by shadows. Bilal turned the headlights brighter, and that's when they saw it. The boy's face was completely pale. His eyes were solid black. No whites, no pupils, just darkness. Hassan screamed, "Drive!" Bilal hit the accelerator. The car sped past the boy and disappeared deeper into the fog. Everyone in the car was breathing heavily. No one spoke for several minutes. Then suddenly, Omar slowly turned around. "Guys," he said quietly, "don't panic. But there's someone sitting behind us." The car instantly fell silent. Bilal's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What do you mean?" Omar's voice shook. "The kid, he's in the back seat." Saad slowly turned his head, and what he saw froze his blood. The little boy was sitting there, completely still, smiling, his black eyes staring directly at them. Saad screamed. Bilal slammed the brakes. The car skidded across the road and stopped. They all turned around at the same time. The back seat was empty. The boy was gone, but something else had appeared. On the inside of the rear window, there were small handprints, dozens of them. like many small hands had pressed against the glass. From the inside, Esson whispered, "We're not alone." Then suddenly, the fog outside began to move. Not drifting like normal fog, but circling the car, like a slow white tornado surrounding them. The radio turned on again. The same distorted voice returned. But now it sounded clearer. And this time, it wasn't just one voice. It was many voices, all whispering the same words. "Stay. Stay with us. Don't leave." The car headlights flickered violently. The engine started shaking. Bilal panicked and slammed the accelerator. The car burst forward through the fog, driving as fast as possible down the road. They drove like that for almost 5 minutes, until suddenly, the fog vanished. Completely. The road ahead became clear again, and far in the distance, they could see the lights of a small town. They didn't stop driving until they reached a gas station. When they got out of the car, the gas station worker noticed something strange. He asked them, "Where did you come from?" Bilal pointed behind them. "The forest road." The man's face turned pale. "That road was closed years ago," he said, after several people disappeared there during foggy nights. The four friends felt a chill run down their spines. Then the worker asked one more question. "How many of you were in the car?" Bilal answered quickly, "4." The man slowly looked at the back seat, then back at them. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Then whose handprints are those?" The friends turned around and saw them again. Fresh, wet, small handprints, slowly appearing on the glass, one by one, as if something invisible was still sitting there. To this day, they all refuse to drive near Black Hollow Forest Road, because sometimes, late at night, when the fog rolls in, drivers say they see a little boy standing in the road, waiting for someone to stop, and those who do often leave with more passengers than they started with. This story was shared online by a truck driver in 2013, a man named Marcus Hill. Marcus had been driving trucks for almost 15 years. Long, lonely highways, night driving, bad weather. He had seen almost everything. But what happened one night during a heavy fog still haunts him. It was 2:30 a.m. Marcus was driving through a remote highway somewhere in the mountains. There were no towns nearby, no street lights, just forest and endless road. The weather forecast said the night would be clear. But suddenly, a thick fog began covering the road. Within minutes, it became impossible to see more than a few meters ahead. Marcus slowed the truck down. "Great, just what I needed," he muttered. Driving a large truck through heavy fog was dangerous, but stopping in the middle of the highway was worse. So he kept driving slowly. The fog grew thicker and thicker until the road looked like it was disappearing into a white void. Then something strange happened. Up ahead, Marcus noticed lights, dim yellow lights, like street lamps. Marcus frowned. That's weird. According to his map, there were no towns for at least another 60 kilometers, but the lights were definitely there. As he drove closer, the fog slowly began to clear, and what he saw made him sit up straight. There was a small town ahead, old buildings, narrow streets, and several dim street lamps glowing in the fog. Marcus checked his GPS again. Still nothing. The map showed only forest. "No way," he whispered. But the town was real, right in front of him. Curious, Marcus slowly drove the truck into the town. The streets were strangely quiet. Too quiet. There were cars parked on the sides of the road, but he couldn't see a single person anywhere. No movement, no voices, no animals, just silence. Marcus parked the truck near what looked like a small diner. The sign outside flickered weakly. It read, Hollow Creek Diner. Marcus stepped out of the truck. The fog here was thinner, but the air felt strangely cold. He walked toward the diner door. Inside, the lights were on, but the place looked frozen. Half-finished meals were sitting on tables. Coffee cups still full, chairs pulled out, like people had suddenly left in a hurry. Marcus called out, "Hello." No answer. He walked further inside. Something felt very wrong. The air was completely silent, not even the hum of electricity. Then suddenly, he heard something, a faint sound from outside. Footsteps, slow, dragging footsteps. Marcus quickly walked back to the door, but when he stepped outside, the street was empty again. The fog was starting to grow thicker. Then he noticed something disturbing. All the parked cars were very old, cars from the 1970s and 1980s. Some looked abandoned for decades, but they weren't dusty. They looked freshly parked. Marcus felt a knot form in his stomach. Then suddenly, he heard voices, many voices, whispering, but he couldn't see anyone. The whispers seemed to come from every direction. "Don't leave. Stay here. You found us." Marcus's heart started pounding. He quickly turned back toward his truck, but when he reached the road, the truck was gone. The place where it had been parked was empty. Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. That's not possible. He looked around the street. Nothing. Just fog and empty buildings. Then suddenly, he saw something move. Across the street. Figures. Dark shapes, standing in the fog. At first he thought they were people, but when they stepped closer, he realized something terrifying. They weren't walking. They were gliding slowly across the ground, and their bodies looked wrong. Thin, twisted, and completely motionless except for the slow movement forward. Marcus slowly backed away. The shapes continued moving closer. More figures began appearing in the fog, dozens of them, silent, watching him. Marcus turned and ran. He ran down the street, past empty buildings, past broken signs, trying to find the highway again, but the town seemed endless. Every street looked the same. Every corner led to another empty road. Then suddenly, Marcus stopped, because he saw something ahead. His truck, parked in the middle of the road, exactly where it had been before. Marcus ran toward it. He jumped inside and slammed the door. The moment he started the engine, the truck headlights turned on, and what they revealed made his blood freeze. Standing all around the truck were the figures, dozens of them, their faces pale, eyes completely black, staring silently at him. Then one of them slowly raised its hand and pressed it against the truck window. The skin looked gray and rotting. More figures moved closer. Soon the entire truck was surrounded. Marcus pressed the accelerator as hard as he could. The truck roared forward, driving straight through the fog. The figures disappeared behind him. He kept driving faster and faster, until suddenly, the fog vanished. The road was clear again. The forest returned, and the town was gone. Marcus immediately stopped the truck. He stepped outside and looked around. There was nothing there. No town, no lights, no buildings, just empty forest. Marcus checked his GPS again. He was exactly where he had been 40 minutes earlier. According to the map, he had never left the highway. Later, Marcus told the story at a truck stop. One of the older drivers listened carefully. Then he said something that made Marcus feel cold again. Years ago, there had been a small town called Hollow Creek in that exact area. But in 1978, a strange accident happened during a heavy fog. Almost the entire town disappeared overnight. Some believed it was a gas leak. Others believed something darker. But the town was abandoned and eventually removed from maps. The old driver looked at Marcus seriously. Then he said quietly, "Truckers sometimes see it again, but only when the fog is thick enough." Marcus asked the final question. What happens if someone stays there too long? The old driver didn't answer immediately. He just stared at Marcus, then finally said, "Then the fog doesn't let them leave." Some truck drivers still claim that on certain nights, when the fog covers the highway, a small town appears where there should only be forest, dim lights, empty streets, and a diner called Hollow Creek. But locals warn travelers about one thing. If you ever see that town in the fog, don't stop, because the people there are still waiting for new residents.